Okay, I am going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. This is our presentation on how to wow your users in SharePoint Forms with dynamic functionality. My name is Will Cooper. I am the training coordinator for Infowise, and I'm going to be going through this presentation with you to show you, different techniques and things that you can do in SharePoint Forms. My background is as a web developer, and I've done lots and lots of SharePoint development, both for on-premise and Office 365. And I work with a lot of different customers building various kinds of SharePoint solutions. I was a customer of Infowise before starting to work with them, and I really do love this product. These tools allow you to do much more in SharePoint, and you're able to do it in an easy way. And I hope that's something that you'll hear in my presentation. You'll see that all the different kinds of things I'm showing you, you don't have to do any kind of special programming or any difficult technical setup. Everything is simple and easy, and that just lets you build quickly and get your solutions up and running as fast as possible. Before I jump into the presentation, I do want to just give some ground rules. So we have a chat interface. If you have questions or comments during the presentation, just use the GoToWebinar chat interface. You can post your questions in there, and we do have other members of our team that will try to answer in the chat. I may address some of those towards the end. Please be patient. If we don't get to your question right away, we'll be sure to get to that towards the end. One awesome thing that we're doing today, we're going to give a free embroidered Infowise polo shirt towards the end of the presentation. This is if you're in USA only, just because of shipping costs. If you are, please stick around. We're going to do a drawing for that at the end. Okay, we'll go ahead and jump in. So the first thing I want to do in my presentation is basically just show you some different functionality before I start talking about how that's set up and how you do these type of things with the Infowise tools. So we're going to get into that first. I am recording the presentation, so if some of this goes a little too fast or you kind of want to review any of this, we will post that up on our website at the end of the presentation. So just want to make you aware of that. Now, what I'm showing on my screen, this is a SharePoint Online tenant. This could be done also for on-premise SharePoint. There's not any part of this functionality or tools that you couldn't do for that. So like I say, I want to kind of show you something. The solution I'm showing is a knowledge-based style solution. If this particular type of tool is something that interests you, we also have a webinar about the solution I'm showing you today, and you could also find that up on our website. So I'm on a dashboard page. You can see this looks a lot different than what you might typically see in SharePoint. I've got a summary links web part, and I've done some styling to get to different categories. The general concept here is this is a system to organize various types of training and instruction across an entire organization. And then at the bottom we have featured articles that have been posted. Okay, so I'm just clicking on a link. It's taking me into a SharePoint form. And what I want you to notice right away is this doesn't look at all like a normal SharePoint form. I've got a header bar on here with some summary information. I've got a lot of details. And then I actually have a video embedded directly into the SharePoint form. So not exactly what you would normally expect. And then also we have some history tracking in this form. So a lot of different types of functionality. Notice that's a blue bar. I was in the view form, and when I switch to the edit form, notice the bar turns green. So I have an obvious visual indicator for my users to help them know when they're editing the article as opposed to just viewing it. I expect many of you have been in a situation where a user complains that they can't update a SharePoint record, and it's because they're in the view form, but it's not obvious to them. This is something you could do to make that obvious to them. So the basic idea here is we have, a title for our article or video, whatever kind of content I have, and I put in some more details about that. We also have these icon fields. These are Infowise color choice. So if I change to different options in here, I kind of have icons. So this kind of helps us for dashboard purposes and things like that. This particular one has a status. This is an approval status right now. If you look towards the bottom of the form, I have a thumbnail, and when I roll my cursor over it, you'll notice it gets bigger. Part of what I want to show is that it really helps to embed dynamic content like that to help users understand the process and that type of thing. So rather than just posting a boring vertical listing of fields in the system, I want to embed instruction and things like that. Now, usually SharePoint help text, it's just straight text that shows in the field, and it kind of clutters up the form, and it's not formatted at all. It's really bare bones, not a good out-of-the-box option. Notice in this one, there's a help bubble, I guess is how I would describe it. When I click on it, it's showing me large, easy-to-read help text that's formatted just exactly the way I want it. And it's not cluttering my form. It only pops into view when I click those help bubbles. So that's something that looks a lot nicer than what you would normally be able to do in SharePoint. Also, we have content that pops into view according to what I answer in fields. This is a common thing that you want to do when building custom SharePoint forms. You want to have accordion sections. You want to have content that shows up, but only in the case that it's needed in that particular situation. The trouble with this is that it's normally pretty hard to set up. We have some configuration that lets us do this really easily, and I'm going to show that to you soon. Another piece of functionality here is cascading dropdowns. Notice I have a division and department field. Notice when I change the division field, the options for departments will change for me. So we have the ability to kind of help the user by narrowing down options. They can kind of incrementally drill down to whatever it is they need to pick. So we'll talk about that some as well. So the concept here is there may be an article, just straight content providing instructions to the user, or alternatively, as I mentioned, instead, they may want a video. Notice that the form is changing according to what I'm doing real time. This is happening dynamically, not after the form save. So when I pick yes to the video, it pops up in this tab and it will show that to me. And then on history logging, we have some dynamic functionality in the background, which is keeping a trail of the updates to this record. So I can kind of see who touched this last, who made updates, and that type of thing. Additional, I've got some more information for the user in the form. This is a fragment part to the form that we've added. Again, without any extra tools, I'd really be stuck with doing things with scripting or programming or other kinds of functionality, which would be difficult and only able to be maintained by a developer. So not a great story as far as that goes. Okay, so let's go into these kind of pieces of functionality that I've set up, and I want to kind of talk to you about how I'm able to do some of the things that you're seeing in these forms. So with the Infowise tools, what I have is tools that are baked right into the SharePoint interface. I don't have to go off into SharePoint Designer or some desktop tool. I can just get to it right in SharePoint. So my list is called Knowledge, and when I go to that list, to the ribbon toolbar, I get a new option. I got a button here which says Design, and this takes me to the Infowise Design screen. And this is a hub for all of the different types of things that I might want to do to customize that form. Now, what Infowise lets you do is customize the look and feel of the form, of course, which is what we're setting up. But also you have things such as being able to control the process, in terms of things changing on status. And then even you can get customized output such as PDFs, and I can show that to you just a little bit. So one of the first things that you're going to do when you're creating a form like the one that I'm showing you is to go into this first settings area, which is our tabs and tab permissions. And I want you to see how easy this is to work with. There's nothing complicated here. Basically, I just define my tab sections in the form. I can just type a name for the tab, and they just show up here. And at that point, all I have to do is pick which fields should show on each tab. So notice in the left column over here, I can just pick that, and then I can do things like change the sequence of those fields however I want to do that. I don't have to do any programming or anything like that. I just pick where those fields will show up. When I was demoing my form, you might have noticed kind of a couple of different fragments I made reference to. And basically, this is just inline chunks of HTML. Now, the good thing is you don't have to be an HTML or CSS whiz. There's a visual editor tool that you can use to build this. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with using this kind of tool. I can just highlight information, and I can format this to get it to look just exactly the way that I want. And then when I go back, that's going to be baked into the form. So I can just take this little fragment, and then what I'm able to do is just add that just like the fields in there. So I had two things in there. I had a process diagram, and then I had that node in the history section. So right there, you've already got the ability to add a lot better look and feel because you can put in your own custom formatted content. You're not stuck just with what SharePoint gives you. Okay, you can conditionally show and hide sections of the form. I'll come to that in just one second. Under the general settings, if you noticed, I had a title bar above the form. SharePoint does not give that to me. What I'm able to do is just reference field content. So in this case, what I did is set it up to show the title and the topic, which are fields in the form, and then the owner and the current status. And then additional to that, I can do things like change the theme. So without having to do any special formatting or things like that, I can do things like change to several different themes that are provided by Infowise. So we can take a look. I'll change to arrow. Actually, I don't want to save my field sequence change. So let me come back to that in a second. And then also, if I want to get a little more customized, I have a really easy way to do that. I can embed some CSS if I want to, but in most cases, it's not even necessary to do that. But if you do want to add like a tweak to the form to get something to stand out a little bit more, put a border around it, that kind of thing, you can do that. In my case, I have that rollover image, and so I need to set a hover style to get that kind of rollover functionality. Really easy for me to do that. I just have to make a reference to the size, and then I can just put it right in these settings. So I didn't have to go and embed a style sheet or anything like that. I can just come to this configuration screen and do that. Some other key kinds of settings that apply in my form. Having a dynamic experience for the user means that depending on whether they're creating a new record or editing the record or changing fields, I need that form to change and adapt to what they're doing to provide a better user experience. So I have some rules in here. Recall that I didn't want the video player to show unless this was an article that does include video. In order to get that function, all that I had to do is create a couple of rules in here. So I can come into these Infowise column permissions, and I just simply said, don't show this when video equals no. And notice I have this apply permissions dynamically. That's what's giving me that real-time response to the form. And then there's a second rule which says to make it readable when the video equals yes. So I don't have to do any programming, and I most certainly would have to do programming if I didn't have those tools. So it's really simple to use. Another one I have in here, I don't need to show the history section in the new form. That would just be extra clutter and completely unnecessary to somebody creating a new article. So I just made a rule that tells SharePoint, don't show that section on the new form. So I can keep tweaking and get that form to do just what I want based on dynamic situations. Okay, so those permissions help us get some of that kind of accordion functionality, if you will. One of the things I showed was a cascading lookup field. In Infowise, we refer to this as a connected lookup. This gives me a configuration option where I can set up a column and map it to another one. So I basically have two lookup lists, and by just applying a couple configuration settings, it lets me get that cascading lookup type of functionality. So again, without those tools, it's normally a headache, a major headache for me to try to figure this out. It's really a programmer-oriented task, but in our case, that's not the case. One thing that's incredibly easy for me to do, and probably one of the first things that you can learn using these tools, is to set up these color choice fields. I love dashboards. I like making them look nice, and one thing I'm able to do is take a boring SharePoint choice field and include either a background color, or I can pick icons that would be mapped to those statuses. So I've got lots of different options. In fact, I have 250 icons I can pick from, and this just lets me have something that looks nice on dashboards. Very easy setup. You can apply that to all your SharePoint choice fields. So that's a cool thing that you can do. Might be wondering about how I did the video. So I mentioned one part of Infowise, an important part of it is that instead of having to deal with the headache that is SharePoint Workflow, you can instead use these actions, and it provides you a simple, intuitive way to create a process and actions tied to that form. So just to give you an example, I have one for history. I'll show you that real quick, and then we'll show you the video one. What I'm able to do is set a trigger. Excuse me. If the status changes, that's what's going to trigger the action. And what I do is just have it put in a chunk of code, and it spits out this history log that's going to prepend for me. And then I just set that to check for that on the new and edit form. For the video player, basically similar kind of thing. I have a multi-line rich text field. It's a SharePoint field. And what I do is take that code. This is a YouTube video referenced code. And I just put that right into the form. So notice in square brackets, I have this ID reference. Now, in Infowise, what they do for you is give you a code editor tool where you can just do things like double click, and it'll give you all your options, and you have different functions for referencing different information. So this is a little more technical. This will be very appealing to any of you SharePoint power users or even developers out there who are interested in doing things that are workflow oriented. And certainly you could make this fit in with other things you already have, such as SharePoint Workflow or even the new Microsoft Flow processes. Okay, let me review and see what other things I want to talk about in terms of how I set that up. Okay, on the header bar, the styles, the way that I applied that was to enter the CSS, so I can do that independently based on the edit or view form. I'll show you on the history logging what it does. It's basically listening for a status update. Come back to my site for a second. Then also have this what's new checkbox in the form, and that's actually controlling what happens in this section. So this is a way to kind of feature different articles. So let me come back into one of those for a second for you. So notice that it says featured on home. Basically, I have a content query web part, which is just a straight SharePoint web part, and depending on whether or not that's turned on, that's letting me control whether this shows up on the home page. That's how that's tied together. You can imagine if you were doing a knowledge-based system where that could be really useful to highlight new articles or ones that need particular attention. There's our history log. So I showed you it's listening for a status change. In fact, my note that I embedded in the form describes that. And what I'm going to do is change this to published and save it. And we'll give it a second to update. And then after we give it a little bit of time, notice that the status will change in the header bar. In the meantime, let me show you also we have a search feature. This is an Infowise also tool that we set up. Remember I had a tags field. This gives me a way to locate articles that way. So of course searching is a big important area for users. So we just have a simple text field and it's searching for text that contains that. So a really nice, simple, clean search page tied to that. Let me bounce back to my record. So notice the status is published now. And then also notice we prepend it into the history log. So the cool thing here is the system just does that for me. So once I've got that action set up, it's always going to run specifically in the case where a user updates the form and changes the status. So we can keep track of who's making updates onto these records. Okay, so I've showed you guys a lot of information. I want to talk to you a little bit about what you can do, next steps, that kind of thing. So if you come into this site, there's a trial option, and it's incredibly easy to get a trial installed. And if you're curious about some of the things that I'm showing you, this is the very next thing that you need to do. If you're going to do Office 365, you can just come in here. We have an awesome video that shows you exactly how to set this up. It's very simple. It's not limited in any way. You can get the full functionality of the product with the demo. So you can, right after our presentation today, set that up. It's very simple to do that. And of course, you can do the same thing for on-premise. So that would be kind of a next best step. Couple of things I want to mention with our product. We do provide 2 hours of training to you automatically when you get our product. So if you're a little bit nervous in terms of learning about some of these features and functionality, I want you to know that there's really good options there. And then also we have instructor-led training content, which are web sessions specific to your team. And then we have a comprehensive tutorial section, which gives you step-by-step examples on how to use all of the functionality in our site. So there's lots of information for you as you're first getting started with this product. I'm going to try to jump over the questions in a second, but one thing I do want to let you know is that if you want more specific information about a project or something you're doing, we would be happy to set up a one-on-one session with you. If you click on the request a demo on our site, we can schedule that session and we can get into specifics about questions you might have of the product and that type of thing. So please take advantage of that. We'll go ahead and do the drawing for the shirt right now. If you guys want to use the chat, again, this is for people in the US only. What I'm looking for is the number 1 to 100. And you can just enter a number in the chat, and I'm going to pick a winner. I've already picked a number, so you can go ahead right now. All right, we got lots of numbers coming in. All right, we're almost done. We're almost done. We're almost done. Okay, got a winner. It was 77 Dairy Red Wine. If you are the winner, please go ahead and send me an email with your shirt size and your address. My email is willc@infowisesolutions.com. That's WILLC. And also, if you guys want to know, that's where you would want to send me questions. Some things I do want to remind you about our product. We do include unlimited support with our product license. So if you have technical issues or need help with the product anytime after you get it, we're going to be really happy to help you out. I do want to mention that I am going to be at Ignite in September. So if any of you guys want to talk to me face to face about Infowise or just SharePoint in general, I'm going to be happy to talk to you. So just send me an email and maybe we can hook up down in Orlando next month. So let me check out some of the questions in our chat and might try to address some of that. Gloriana had a comment about, can you have fields blocked depending on initial serial? Yes, you can control whether our fields are read, write, or hidden in any scenario on the new form or during the edit form. So that could be based on other field values, or also you can use security settings. So if you have SharePoint security groups, you can make it such as you could have like a managers section in your form, and only the managers see that and can fill that out. So a lot of different scenarios you can create just using advanced column permissions and settings. Let's see, copy list item. Yeah, you can do automation of copying. That is one of the Infowise actions. The best way I could help you to understand what you can do with Infowise actions is, in my experience, 99.9% of what you could do with SharePoint Workflow, you can do it with Infowise actions. So a way you could think of that as sort of a simple and easier to work with way to do SharePoint Workflow. Absolutely, copy is one of those options available. So I think that kind of covers our questions. That's pretty much most of what I had to present today. We're going to stay on for a little bit to try to answer questions in the chat, but as far as my presentation, that's about it. We will be doing another webinar next month, so keep your eyes open for that. And for our Infowise customers, we're going to be doing a live coding session next Friday to show you building an approval system. So that's another thing we do. If you're interested in watching another developer build a solution using Infowise Tools, that's something that can help you kind of pick up some tips and that type of thing. That's it for the presentation today. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys again next time. And if you do have any additional questions regarding this or the product or anything at all, like I said, just send me an email. You can send general questions to sales@infowisesolutions.com, or you can send questions to me, willc@infowisesolutions.com. Thank you very much.